I always wanted to find ways to help women out there, especially Asian women, because, growing up, I wish I had a support system where I could turn to that would deal with my own issues at the time. And so that's how I started my podcast. And, it wasn't easy, but I got through it. And yeah, I'm just grateful now because it's led me to so many things, right? Like being featured in articles, being interviewed on different podcasts, even creating books.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Design the Future podcast. I've got a very special guest on today. Please just go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
Hi, Olley. Thanks for having me on today, and thanks for everyone tuning into this episode. My name is Sheena Yap Shan. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I have a podcast called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I interview Asian women about their journey to self-confidence. The main reasons why I do that, as Asian women, we don't have a lot of support system when it comes to confidence issues, so we feel like we're always alone in this journey. And I know it's not just Asian women who feel that; a lot of women feel that. And also representation for me is huge because I never had that growing up in Canada. I actually wanted to be a white girl named Heather with blonde hair and blue eyes because that's what I thought being beautiful was. So, representation is huge for me. And other than that, I'm always trying to find ways to help women build their confidence, whether it's through coaching, products, services. And in 2021, I'll have two books coming out. One I co-created called Asian Women Who Boss Up, where we feature 16 Asian women who are sharing their stories of how they're able to forge their own path and thrive. And the second book will be Women of Color Who Boss Up, which I'll be featured in. And it's the same concept. For us, representation is huge, and it has to start with, in the media. We need to have something that we can look up to and say, if someone like her who kind of looks like me was able to do it and thrive, then it's possible for me as well.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So before we dive into the sort of questions and stuff that I'd like to go through, just talk to me a little bit about how you got to where you are now. What did you do beforehand, and how have you got to this point where you're now just like writing books? Because I'm guessing at the start that would have been like a unachievable goal, right? But now you're obviously in the trenches getting it done. So how did you sort of get to where you are now?
For sure. So back then I worked at an office job. I was there for 12 years. And, I always knew that I couldn't work at a job or in an office until I reach retirement age. Like I would just sit in my cubicle and I would be like, this can't be it. There has to be something more
Mm,
out of it. But, when you work as a woman, you feel like you have a cap, right? I remember one time where I wanted to look for another job because I wanted to get paid more. And my coworker at the time, he was like, why would you look for another job? Like, you make more than enough as a woman. And because of that, like what he said, I took it to heart. I thought, maybe he's right. I'm a woman. Who am I to go further than what I've achieved now? And so I actually stopped looking, and that's how I ended up, working in an office for 12 years because I thought that was the best I could do. And I
mm,
like sharing the story because I want women to realize, like, you don't have to believe what one person tells you. That's just a person's perception. It's not the truth. And I, like I mentioned, I always knew something, like there was something bigger for me, but I was too scared to go out there because, like I mentioned, I never thought I was good enough for anything. And it wasn't until about 9 years ago when my aunt passed away. She passed away from a freak accident, and it was just like a big eye opener for me because, she was able to do a lot of the things she wanted to do in her 50s that most 20-year-olds would want to do, like scuba diving, rock climbing, traveling the world. And a lot of people told her, you shouldn't be doing that. You're too old. Like, what are you doing? But it didn't stop her because it was something that made her happy, right?
mhm.
And, it just made me realize how short, our quality of life is. You just never know what's going to happen. You never know when it can be taken at, at any given moment. It's unpredictable. And so I wanted to live my life as, as meaningful and just like live life on my terms as much as I can,
Sure.
because like we do have one life and we got to make the most of it. I don't want to wake up one day and be like regretting stuff that I didn't get to do, because life can go so fast in an instant. Like even now, it's 2020 is almost over, and it's been like, I know it's been a crazy year, but we feel like it's been forever, but really it just went by so fast. So,
Mm,
you know, I didn't like immediately like quit my job and like start doing stuff. Like it's still like I still was kind of scared going out there, but that would always be in the back of my head, like, life is so short, what are you doing? And eventually I started doing things like, finding ways to live my own life, do research, decide to sell my condo, and started traveling. And I always wanted to find ways to help women out there, especially Asian women, because growing up, I wish I had a support system where I could turn to that would deal with my own issues at the time. And so that's how I started my podcast. And it wasn't easy, but I got through it. And yeah, I'm just grateful now because it's led me to so many things, right? Like being featured in articles, being interviewed on different podcasts, even creating books. And, creating a book, well, like co-creating a book is not always easy, but it's fun. It's rewarding because, when you and 16 other women have like a similar vision and mission, it's just great. Like, I always say it's better together. And when you can work with like-minded people, it's just like magic happens. And like, it's just such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, that's a really cool journey so far. So now you're doing the podcast. What are you offering some sort of service with that as well, or?
Yeah, so I've started a coaching service because I understand now why coaching is so important. Back then I never believed in it. I thought I didn't need the help, but really it was a big eye opener. Like, having a coach really helped me build my own confidence, helped me just like be cheered on and pushed on and like show you like you can actually do more than you realize. And sometimes we can't catch that because we're so stuck on ourselves and like we're our own biggest critics and we have blind spots that we can't see. So that's why I think having a coach really helps you see those blind spots, see what you don't see, right? Like, sometimes we feel like we're not enough, but when one person can really look at you in the eye and say like, I believe in you, I know you have this, and don't worry if it takes a while, you will get there, it makes a huge difference on a person's life. And
Mm,
so now I like, that's how I appreciate it because it's really helped me and I want to do the same for other people.
Amazing, yeah. And I think that's one thing that's definitely needs to be said. Like when people talk about coaching and stuff like that, sometimes it's literally the accountability as well. And of course, don't go out and hire a coach that hasn't got proven results. Like do your due diligence when you're speaking to these people. But also when you're hiring a coach, it's going to be someone that has done what you're looking to do, right? So having someone that has done what you're looking to do, and then when you come into a problem, having someone that you could go to and say, look, this has happened. What should I do? And them being able to tell you exactly what they've done in the past, or even them being able to tell you the mistakes they made with that situation, just so you don't do the same thing. So I think that's really cool. What's one thing that you've done that you're certain none of my previous guests have done?
um I guess the podcast that I have, I mean, it's such a unique thing because every time you know, I I interview a new person,
Mhm.
especially as like I interview Asian women. They're always like, "I wish I had this when I was a child. I wish I had this when I was growing up," because it's something that we never had before, and it's something that is needed
Mhm.
because growing up, we've been told what to do all our lives. We have to act a certain way, always be perfect, and it really traps us and hurts us and hurts our confidence. It hurts how we see ourselves, and we end up being our own worst critic, which is bad, right? Because then we don't have the confidence to go out there and do the things we want. So just sharing the stories of these women who have been through things like domestic abuse, cancer, being in jail, being a drug offender, being bankrupt 3 times, and be able to overcome them and like live the life that I want and thrive is like inspirational and just relatable, right?
Mm.
Because it's like, okay, I'm not the only one who goes through this. I'm not crazy. Like everyone goes through this. Sometimes when you're all by yourself, you feel like you're the only person doing like who is going through what you're going through, but really a lot of people go through this similar things. It's just nobody talks about it. That's why like for me mental health is huge, right? Like we have to talk about things like this because the more we talk about it and the more we bring awareness, the more people can feel okay with what they're going through and they can find a solution to it, whether it's to seek professional help. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If it helps you become better, then do it. I know sometimes when we say we're going to seek professional help, there's this stigma like something's wrong with you because you have to pay someone to become better. No, nothing's wrong with you. If that's the outlet you need, then go for it, right?
Mhm.
We're all different. We all find different ways to cope with our issues. You know, some people might just go in the bathroom and just scream, and that's okay. So we have to be okay with those things, and we have to realize like everyone's in their own journey, so not everyone's journey is going to be the same. We're going to have different takes on things and find different ways to cope with our issues or, you know, build our confidence.
Amazing, amazing. If you had to delete all but three apps from your phone, what would those three apps be that you know you'd really struggle running this online business without?
Probably 3 social media accounts. Just because sometimes, especially now, like, the first thing you do, everyone's stuck to their phones because they wanna see what's going on social media, and it's, like, a big time distraction. For me,
Mm.
I know I'm guilty of it, and I think if I delete 3 of those apps, I think I would be good.
So what would be three of the apps that you would keep though?
Um,
If you had to only, if you could only keep three apps that was on your phone, what would those
oh,
three apps
it's
be you keep?
sorry,
Yeah. That's
I
it.
thought you
I
meant
like that. I like because I'm the same. Like I've literally got a safe in my office that when I get in here to do some work, I put my phone in the safe and it's just like
yeah.
I'm not touching that until I've finished everything I need to do.
Yeah, the 3 apps I would keep is probably, LinkedIn, my step counter because I
Right.
count my steps, and, probably Yelp because I like to eat.
What was the last one? Sorry.
Yelp, you
Okay.
know, Yelp? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
like to eat. I always like to look for different restaurants.
Okay, cool. I like that. I like that. Cool.
Yeah.
Wicked. As a child, what did you want to be, and how does that sort of differ to where you're at now?
I think as a child, I didn't really know what I wanted. I guess growing up, you know,
Love
when you
that.
watch like Disney movies and stuff, it's like I want to be a princess. I just want to be pretty because that's all you ever saw on TV. And
Mm,
so, really, I didn't know what I wanted even until like 5 years ago. I didn't even really know what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to help people, especially women. I just didn't know how. And that's how like podcasting came into play.
mhm.
And even when I started podcasting, I had no clue what a podcast was. I'd always see it on Apple, like iTunes, but I had no idea what it was. I'm like, "What is this thing? What the heck is a podcast?"
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I never knew what I wanted as a young child.
Okay, cool. And sorry, just while we're on the podcast, how many episodes have you done at this point?
So I've been doing this for 5 years. I have over 800 episodes.
Blimey.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And how is it going? Like, so you've obviously been doing it for 5 years. You've obviously noticed the progression throughout.
For sure. I mean, you know, I was to 2020 was the year I finally hit a million downloads from the time I started, which I never thought was
Nice.
possible. You know, I didn't think that it would reach over 150 countries. Like where like I this is stuff that I never knew was possible. I was happy if I had 100 downloads when I
Okay.
first started, but sometimes you never know what happens when you just keep at it, right? And I know a lot of people are like, "What's your secret for doing this?" And I'm like, "I've been doing this for 5 years. That's the secret. You just put in the
Mhm.
work, right? You put in the work. You find ways to, you know, spread your message. You share your story. You connect with other podcasters. You go in different groups. You connect with different guests. Like there's so many ways to do it, but the main thing is you got to be consistent about it because if not, then it'll be like it won't happen. Like you got to take action in what you want to do for you to make it happen, and it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. There's days where I wanted to quit this podcast because sometimes I was just like, is this even worth it? Like, is what I'm doing even worth it? Is it even really making a difference? And then I would have to like go back and check like my mission and my message as to why I started this.
Mm.
And, you know, just even receiving messages from listeners was like, okay, I am doing something right because there's one person who benefited from it. And that's all that matters because all it takes is just one person for their lives to change, and you just don't know the effect that person can do when her life is changed, right? You never know where she can go. Like she might be able to impact like 100,000 people because of one episode from your show that she got inspired and realized if she could do it, I could do it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think that's so important. With that sort of being said, like you said, you get comments and people messaging you saying and complimenting the show. Um, when was the point that you, like you said, sort of realized that it was worth it, whether it was monetary, like monetary gain from the podcast, or a specific someone messaging you, telling you the impact the podcast had? Um, does anything stand out on that timeline?
Yeah, I mean, there was one lady who I didn't even realize really wanted to be a guest on my show. You know, she had this whole story that she shared on Facebook how she really wanted to be on my show, and when I asked her, like, she was so like, she was so happy. Like,
Hmm.
she went to buy a microphone, like, she went through all this trouble just to be on my show, and I didn't realize, like, she went through all that. For me, it's like, I ask somebody, if they say yes, it's great, everything's set up.
Sure.
But the fact that she was able to share that made me realize, wow, like, I didn't think there's someone who would go through all that trouble just to make sure she has the best interview possible. And it makes a difference because I'm not the only one who wants to really help women out there or help them, like, build that confidence. Like, it takes two, right, to make things work. I mean, it takes, part of the host to make it a good show. It takes the guests also, the guest part, to make it good, so that we can provide, like, good content, inspirational content where people can take action in their own lives. And so I think that was like a big thing for me, because you never know unless someone talks about it, right? And you're unaware of, like, these situations unless someone brings it up.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And with that being said, like you said, we're all here to try and motivate and inspire others to take action. What would you suggest someone do if let's paint a picture of someone's typed in how to start a podcast that makes money, right? Let's really break it down, right? Because let's imagine that I started my podcast for the exact same reason as you. Is this is here to inspire and motivate other people to take action, but a lot of people do have the monetary gain in their eyes when they're starting a podcast, right? So what would be your advice to start getting some revenue coming through the podcast as early on? Now you've done it for 5 years, and obviously it took you a long time to get to that point, right?
I mean, I would list down as many ways as you can to make money off a podcast. There's, like, many different ways. You pick and choose what works for you. You can pick, like, the easiest thing, whether it's to be an affiliate marketer. You refer a product, and if they buy it, you get money. Or you create something as small as, like, an ebook, or you do a free giveaway, and they get into your lists, and you can start selling through your lists. I mean, there's so many different ways. Even for your intro and outro, you can mention your services that you provide, because the more you repeat it, when people listen to you, like, it'll be ingrained in their head, like, oh, she has a service, I should go check it out. So
Mm,
just start, like, it's not going to be perfect, it's going to suck, you might not hear anything, but you got to start somewhere, right? Nothing is done overnight, it takes a lot of work.
definitely, definitely. And have you had any sponsors on the podcast this time?
Not yet. I
Okay,
haven't.
cool. So it's clearly just like promoting your own services in the background and just
Yeah.
bringing people on. That's cool. That's cool. I love that. Um, when it comes to creating content, have you got any like standout tips to someone that's never created content in their life before, and they've just sort of jumped on and they want to start building a personal brand?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, pick one thing that you want to be known for. I think start with that, and then figure out if you want to do something that's a standalone show or interview style. I like interview style because it's just easier to create content. I mean, and, like, I think podcasting is a great way to connect with influential people on your podcast. I
Sure.
mean, of course, you'll get no's. I've gotten a lot of no's. Can you imagine? I've interviewed over 800 women. So imagine how many no's I got
Mm,
before I had the 800 women who said yes. And I have an outline that I give to the guests so that they're prepped for it. And I've used the same outline from episode 1 to episode 800 and so on. And if you can, if you have an outline, it's great. It helps you, it helps them.
mhm.
And if you want to find out how you even go about having an outline, just check out other people's shows, right? Kind of model off of them and see what they've done. That's what I did. I checked out other people's shows. I modeled off their outline. I kind of put a spin to it, like, so that it's my stuff, but I
Mhm.
modeled off of it. And just getting ideas from other people's podcasts makes a huge difference. So at least you have an idea what you want to go through and what are the things you want. But I say the most important thing is to have a purpose, because once you have a purpose, it makes things a lot easier.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's so important because people will come to me and they'll be like, I want to start this, I want to start that, and they're like, it's too late, it's too late. There's so many people doing this, or there's so many people doing that. Bear in mind, they're talking about three different things when they say it as well, and you're like, no, like you're no one's ever going to be able to do it how you're going to be doing it. So exactly the same, like if someone else had a podcast that's specifically for Asian women, like even if they went in and done it, even though you're already doing it, like no one's going to be able to do it like that individual. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, is like just modeling from success as well, right? Not reinventing the wheel, and sort of just designing it and modeling it on the back of someone else's stuff, I think is key. um what's one thing that you've done when it comes to like creating systems, right? Because obviously having a podcast, like we've even just spoke about multiple different things there. One, like making money, but two, even inviting guests on to the podcast. Like people won't even think about that. They think, oh, I'm just gonna have a podcast and my inbox is going to be filled with potential
Yeah.
guests. Like it's not going to happen, right? So what's a couple of systems, whether it's in the business or in the podcast, that you've got down now that obviously helps you bring in either new guests or new revenue to the business?
Well, having, a scheduler is like an online scheduler, and using Google Calendar has really helped me, manage my time, getting guests, having them schedule it, because you don't want to be doing that manually, right? You
Mm,
want to have a scheduler that can, just they pick a time and date that works for you, that converts the time zone for you and gives you reminders every time, like, hey, just remember tomorrow we have a podcast interview, and then 1 hour before, like, hey, remember we have a podcast interview. So things like that, having an email system, kind of like, um, get response and all that, Mailchimp, to really have, people come to you, and you can send, one email with a push a button to like many people, right?
hmm
Whether it's promoting a new episode, you have a new interview, promoting a new deal, a new service, a new product, things like that really helps you out, especially if you're doing this by yourself and you don't have the kind of money. You got to start somewhere, right? You got to start placing systems that work for you and benefit you, so you save time and you can focus on like other stuff on your business.
Yeah, definitely. um and let's imagine you can only read one book that you've already read before, right? So you've had to have already read this book before. You can only read one book for the rest of your life. What would that book be?
Oh my gosh, that's hard. I've read a lot of books. I think, one book I really like was called Ikigai. So it's like a Japanese way of living, and how about
Okay.
talking about balance. And one thing I really like was like talking about, when you eat, like there's a cap as to how much you eat. You don't eat until you're like super full and you end up falling asleep. You actually eat enough that you start feeling full and kind of stop, because a lot of us go overboard, right? I know I do. And so just having that mindset of like, when you feel it, you kind of just put the stops, put the brakes, and learn to have a balance. So it's not really like a business book, it's just like a different way of living.
No, I love that. I love that. I love that. Someone I interviewed someone earlier and they straight up was just like the Bible, and I was like, I didn't expect it. So I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, the Bible has really great like life lessons. I know
Mhm.
it's a religious book and some people might find it like, but it's one of the oldest books in the world, and like they have, a lot of life lessons that you can learn from.
Definitely, for sure. Obviously, this is the Designer Future podcast. So to wrap it up, I would love to know where you sort of see yourself in the next 12 months, and what's a couple of key things that you'd want us to know about.
For sure. I mean, wow, in 12 months, I haven't even thought that far ahead yet. Really just finding more platforms to elevate, women's voices, especially Asian women's voices, being able to speak on stage, hopefully, well, virtually or in person, depending on the situation. Hopefully things do get better by 2021. Just excited to have the books come out, which is another great thing. Just really excited to finally have something that we can see on Amazon, because it's like, you know, I was like trying to look for book covers that feature Asian women or women of color on the cover, and there's none, right? And it's 2020. We really need that representation, because if not, like, other little girls and other women won't be able to see what's possible for them. And so, yeah, just doing that and just, finding ways to also work on myself, because this journey is something that we work on for the rest of our lives.
Mm, amazing, amazing. And sorry, just on the back of that, I'd love to find out one more thing. When it comes to like building habits and you know creating these systems, not necessarily online or on your phone or anything like that. What's one habit that you've changed throughout your life that has made the biggest impact?
Working out, it's like, for me, some form of exercise really helps me, and especially with the pandemic, if the gyms aren't open, then I just go outside. I do home workouts. I spend an hour or enough to like keep get my 10,000 steps. That's why
Mhm.
I said the
Yeah,
step
yeah.
counter is like my one of the apps I would keep. And so, and it doesn't have to be that. You can find something that works for you. This is the thing about confidence. You get to pick and choose what works for you. So maybe reading a book might help you. Writing on your journal, writing down thoughts, doing a dance workout might help you. You have to pick and choose what really works for you so that it can really help you become better.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to leave your links in the description below if anyone wants to go and check you out. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words for the guys watching, listening?
For sure. I mean, if you're having a hard time right now, I know a lot of us are going through some really crazy stuff, especially in 2020. The world just basically went upside down with the pandemic and everything that's been happening. Just know that it's temporary and you can come out of it, and just look for brighter days ahead. And when it comes to confidence, just know you don't have to make big leaps to build confidence. Take it step by step. It's actually the small daily actionable steps is what yields the big results. Most people say when someone makes it, oh, they're an overnight sensation. They're not really an overnight sensation. They've been at it for years. It's just nobody talks about it.
Yeah, completely, completely. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, guys, go and check her out. The link will be in the description, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care,
Thank
guys.
you.
Hollywood 6.